Good morning to everybody, and thank you for giving me the time to speak on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that is lay ministry. What I'm going to do is discuss lay ministry, which is kind of a broad topic, but it's going to be from my perspective, so I'll narrow it down a little bit. Just as kind of a refresher course, what is lay ministry? Well, the term refers to the many ways that the laity of the church live out their baptismal covenant. The term laity is derived from the Greek word for people and generally refers to those who are baptized and have not been ordained. So we exercise lay ministry in the gathered church through the organizations of the church, our vestries, our Christian education, parish programs, etc. And then we also exercise it in the scattered church, out in the world, the ministry of baptism expressed at home, in the marketplace, out in society, anywhere where we have opportunities to live the Christian faith. The Catechism notes that the ministers of the church are lay persons, bishops, priests, and deacons. The ministry of lay persons includes bearing witness to Christ wherever they may be. Just again, gathering, transforming, and bearing witness out in the world is what we are all about, at the heart of what we all do. So the Episcopal Church provides a structure for lay ministry. As the bishop noted, Title III, Canon 4. Subject to guidelines established by the bishop, a communicant in good standing may be licensed by the ecclesiastical authority to serve as pastoral leader, worship leader, preacher, Eucharistic minister, visitor, evangelist, or catechist, and then it goes on about requirements. I am licensed as a worship leader, a lay Eucharistic visitor, and a chalicist. And as a worship leader, I would regularly lead public worship under the direction of the member of the clergy or other leader who exercises oversight of my congregation. In this case, it would be my pastor. There is another category of lay preacher, and that would be a person licensed by the bishop to preach. And there are a set of additional requirements for that, which would be typically training and examination on the Holy Scriptures, Book of Common Prayer, hymnal, conducting public worship, and other things. So that's kind of a rough idea of the circle that I kind of operate in. For those of us who may not wish to flip through every page of the Book of Common Prayer to see what a lay worship leader can do, I found a list. And that list was very comprehensive. In fact, it was more than I was aware of. In non-sacramental areas, worship leaders can lead the daily offices, daily devotions, the Great Litany, is Ash Wednesday, Liturgy of the Palms, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, the Exhortation, Penitential Order, is a part of a reconciliation without absolution, ministration to the sick. What else do we have? Burial of the dead. And my favorite on the list, what to do when the service is Holy Eucharist, it's time to start, the priest hasn't arrived, and there is no deacon. And, of course, the way of the cross. So all this is laid out in the Book of Common Prayer, but one of the questions is how I got into lay worship leadership. And I want to preface that by saying I started off like many other people. I wore a lot of hats in the church, committees, vestry, property committee, you name it. I've probably done it or helped somebody do it. Well, St. Luke's last rector established a trained laity to serve as chalices, lay Eucharistic visitors, and worship leaders. And I want to say we were licensed and we were seasoned. We got out and we worked. Then the rector announced her retirement, and we had 12 months to get our act in gear and be ready before she left. So we gathered for extended leadership meetings during that time, and we explored how we saw ourselves as a church in Seaford. The parish was really trying to work its way past clergy dependence, and when I use that term clergy dependence, I am not saying we did not need clergy, but I'm talking in terms of the laity knowing what to do on a regular basis and not have to ask the priest, well, what do I do? What scripture do I use? What page do I turn to? That was the dependence we were trying to work our way out of. And this was a point of a major culture change for the parish. And we got beyond the point of what are we going to do? That's a typical fear-based response that you hear over and over again in these types of change. We got accustomed to looking out for ourselves and for our parish, and fear left the system. That was the major turning point. We went from worrying to being constructive and adding to the system. We became what we call a lay-led parish, and we are successful and thriving with the services of our part-time pastor, Reverend L. We require a priest for priestly duties and not for the administration of the parish business. That's the difference. Worship is joyful. Later on, St. Luke's identified 3 areas to address: evangelism, pastoral care, and community ministry. And we used a total ministry framework for learning that was developed in the Diocese of Northern California. And our parish consultant designed a training program centered on a book called Cultivating the Missional Church, New Soil for Growing Vestries and Leaders. So we built on that, and we found that all of our parishioners are needed to support the shared mission work of the church. We, the laity, not the priest, or in our case, are responsible for pastoral care, administration, spirituality, and many other aspects of parish life. And that's where I really ended up taking the deep dive and becoming more engaged as a worship leader. Morning prayer is typically what we may think of when we think of worship leaders. But as I noted before, there's a host of services we could be called upon to lead. We share the ministry with our pastor. Lent and Holy Week, as many of you know, are very busy times, so we support our pastor by lightening their load and leading some of the services during that season. Some of our times as lay worship leaders are joyous, and sometimes we're needed to provide comfort during times of bereavement. We are called upon for Eucharistic visitations and ministration to the sick, sometimes on very short notice. There have been a number of times in which my visit was just prior to the sick person's death. The next time I saw him was at the funeral service. And I consider it a privilege to be able to provide some degree of comfort to individuals and their families. Incidentally, Service instructions concerning the burial service in the Book of Common Prayer state that when the services of a priest cannot be obtained, a deacon or lay leader may preside in the service. I have presided at the burial service of a congregant, and yes, that first step out is a really big one. I've discovered that some folks who'd like to serve their congregations as worship leaders might feel deterred by the prospects of preaching and funerals. And I say to you, do not be deterred, because we are not left to flounder. I've received support from many mentors, from the past experience in the church, from what's written in the Book of Common Prayer, and from ministry coursework. This month, in fact, next week, I'll be completing Luther Seminary's 12-month School for Lay Ministry. Later on this morning, we'll hear about the Stevenson School for Ministry as a training resource for laity in this diocese. I have greatly appreciated the time spent with my classmates. We've gained understanding and insight about our ministry work with topics including homiletics, ministry, preaching at funerals, preaching at challenging funerals, the Bible, congregational leadership and development, church history, and many other fundamentals of lay ministry. The point is, training and resources are readily available to us, and we need to develop our competencies as lay people wherever possible. The more we understand about our ministries, the better we will be able to serve. Service as a worship leader is a journey. Your parish's context can be unique and ever-changing. So be able to see opportunities and adapt to challenges. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, St. Luke's has been live streaming its service, plus a gospel and sermon clip. As a worship leader who doubles as a videographer, I've become interested in finding ways to meaningfully connect online worshipers and worshipers in the pews with each other as a wider community of faith. We have folks, at St. Luke's, we have folks worshiping regularly with us from within the Delmarva Peninsula, across the United States, and from overseas. They are just as much a part of St. Luke's as is our local congregation. The concept of church and its meaning has undergone some changes. Now, we keep track of who's watching the live stream, who has watched our services during the week, and I'm just going to kind of jump into a little broader lay leadership here and why I say we need to have perspective. On any given week, the number of people watching our live stream exceeds the number of people in the pews. The total number of people who've watched the posted video of the service and the gospel and sermon clip far exceeds, I say, any number of people we could hold or did hold on the Sunday service. What I've noticed is also that half as many people watch the gospel and sermon clip as watch the entire service for the week. Now, the dilemma I'm facing is I want to connect these folks. I want to be connected to these folks, but I'm using platforms that are geared to take your time, take your money, and take your data, okay? And our business is to provide for the other person. And that's the challenge. If anybody out there has a calling to code for the church, I would really hope they could come up with some algorithms that we could make better sense out of the numbers we're seeing on Facebook. But the point is, people are coming back. I'm at least confident and knowing that they're looking for a message and we're able to provide it. Those are the kinds of challenges. It's not like it was 20 years ago. I was once asked if I'd identified this work as a calling, and I realized I had not experienced a single lightning bolt experience, but had instead experienced a long, long series of fulfilling experiences which continually called me back to service in the church. That's my experience with it. What should you take away from this? I would tell you that we need more lay involvement in the church. We need more lay support in the church. If licensed lay service is your calling, I'd expect your ministry, like mine, will evolve, it will be rewarding, and it will grow richer with time. And I urge you, pursue your callings. May your ministries and your time of discernment be blessed. Thank you very much.